I am Christine Roach, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that I'm working on, training student workers on PowerPoint accessibility. Now, I work in the engineering studio for advanced instruction and learning, also called ESAIL. And what we do is we design and develop online graduate courses for the College of Engineering. We have a high volume of course developments coming through our department every year. And so in order to keep up with that, student workers have become really an essential part of our course content production process. We have student workers responsible for a variety of tasks from captions to transcripts to slide design to video editing, among other things. And the nature of working with student workers is that they come in and they go out at least every 2 years, if not more frequently as they graduate or transfer and new student workers come in. An important goal for us was to ensure that we had consistent training that ensured that every cohort of student workers that came in was getting the same level of training and that there was no areas that were being neglected. And this also would ensure that our department products meet our quality standards and accessibility standards and helps us all stay aligned. We have developed in our department a structured student training program called the GAP program that addresses all of the different knowledge, skills, and abilities that our student workers need to be successful in their job. And when students come in, we assume that they're starting at zero with no knowledge of any of these skills, and we're going to give them quite thorough training. So, for this project, I've developed an instructional plan for this PowerPoint accessibility training. The plan is a three-phase training plan. So we start with a flipped presentation, we follow it up with a live work session, and then finally the students complete a mastery task. Step one is a flipped presentation. So before the first session, we want students to watch an introductory instructional video. So students have seen this video, so that should give them a good solid base to bring to our live work session. And a fun thing that I like to start with is a little MVDA demo because I like to have students get their hands on MBDA and so that they can really become aware of different ways that people interface with PowerPoint. And then we'll move into the main part of the work session. I have developed as part of this project an example problem deck. So this is a collection of problematic slides. And so break those out between the students, have them analyze them, and then come back, discuss problems and possible solutions for those problems and do it as a jigsaw. And what I find is that the students are able to share their insights and ask each other questions. So after the video, after the live work session, then students will independently work on a mastery task. For this mastery task, students are going to work on remediating the problem slide deck. And they will screen record and give a commentary explaining their process and their reasoning and submit that screen recording to me for evaluation. And this is where you really see what students understood or didn't understand when they start talking about their approach. And I love this part because students consistently have positively surprised me with their creativity and insights that they bring to this process. This project is 3 deliverables. First, the instructional video. Second, the problem slide deck. And third, the mastery task instructions. Today, I'm not going to share the full video with you, but what I do want to share is the topics that we settled on. So the early topics are the background knowledge students need to fully understand the tasks that they're taking part of. We start with how assistive technology interfaces with PowerPoint, and this is a very brief intro to the concept that different people use PowerPoint in different ways. We talk about PowerPoint and Google Slide are not fully compatible. We have discovered that if you inadvertently convert one to the other, a lot of times some real goofy stuff happens. And for example, several times we've encountered that this causes text boxes to become images, which is obviously an accessibility problem. So we discuss this particular issue so students are aware of it and the workflow that we've set in place to ensure that it doesn't happen. Obviously, students need to know how to run an accessibility report in PowerPoint. But more importantly, they need to understand the limitations of the accessibility report and what they're going to need to manually check. And it's important for students to understand the difference between visual and functional design, right? So there's PowerPoints that are meant as a study aid, and this PowerPoint ends up in student hands. And that has to be treated differently than a PowerPoint that's used to develop visuals for a video. It's also essential to understand the concept of metadata. And then we get down to what you would normally expect to see in this type of tutorial, which is reading order, slide titles, font size, color and contrast issues, tables and all the fun stuff that tables bring, alt text and images of text, meaningful hyperlinks, and finally, knowing how to export to PDF. That is a summary of this training that I've developed for PowerPoint accessibility. So to wrap up this presentation, what I have here is some images of our problem deck. And so what we see at the top left is a slide with has both a title problem and a reading order problem because there's text boxes that were added in random order. So if you were to read in a visual reading order, when you actually tab through this, you'll find that the cursor jumps randomly between these text boxes in a way that's not coherent at all. The top middle slide is a slide where visual design has been used instead of functional design. So we have some layered images with a sequence of numbers. And the problem here is that the visual design requires the layers to be in a certain order. But for the functional design, the reading order is not functional. So this is a little conundrum that I have students interact with and come up with creative solutions to this type of an issue. The third image at the top is a slide with an infographic. We discuss how can we deal with an infographic that has a large amount of information that can't be contained in an alt text box. And so we have some techniques that we've developed in our department to deal with that. The students get to learn some approaches to dealing with this type of slide. On the bottom row, the first slide on the left is a list that is not a list. This has been easier one, so it gets students a break from some of the more challenging concepts here. Then the middle bottom slide image is a slide where color is used in a table to communicate information that is not otherwise available. And this one is a real humdinger because this one requires some serious thought on how to create an equivalent presentation of this information. The final slide example that I have here is an image of a Venn diagram. We discuss this with students because they need to see all of the information that's conveyed in a picture. And so typically the first reaction that students would have to this type of image is to just transcribe the words into an alt text. But that is not sufficient because it doesn't address the information that is conveyed by the organization of this diagram. This is not the complete problem deck, but it's just a sample of the problem deck that I developed. There's no single right answer for some of these problems. The main thing that I want students to take away is that they need to use critical thinking skills when they're looking at slides to consider what information is actually being conveyed on that slide and how can it be equally conveyed for all of our different users. Thank you for listening to my presentation on my PowerPoint accessibility training project. This is still a work in progress, and we're still developing it, but I think this is a very solid start. And I am eager to learn from other people how they are training people to use PowerPoint in an accessible way.